Hi, my name is Paul Pisano, and I'm the team leader for the Federal Highway Administration Road Weather Management and Work Zone Management programs. I, along with my colleague Tracy Scriba, are happy to speak with you today about an effort on work zone safety, national perspectives and activities. For today's presentation, I'll provide a snapshot of work zones and set the stage, and then Tracy will pick up and speak about work zone safety and mobility, as well as the activities taking place within the Federal Highway Administration. First, to set the stage, work zones are a necessary part of transportation. We know that we have to have them in order to continue to build and improve and maintain the transportation network. We also know that work zones have impacts on both safety and mobility. They can be very hazardous places. Lives are lost in work zones. And we also know that they can have significant impacts on the reliability of the network. At the same time, working all across the transportation community, we're seeing very significant improvements in work zones. This is taking place both in the area of safety as well as in mobility, and that's because we're taking a very comprehensive view of the work zone itself, which includes proper planning for the work zone, as well as the necessary design and management of the work itself as it takes place. We're seeing significant improvements in work zones at the same time. We're addressing the impacts of safety, and we know that when we take a comprehensive view with appropriate planning, design, and management of the work zone, that it can improve both safety and mobility. The Federal Highway Administration is actively engaged in work zone safety and mobility efforts. This starts at many staff levels, including staff at headquarters, where Tracy and I work, as well as in our division offices, the Resource Center, and at the Research and Development Office. We address work zones through many different activities, and this includes conducting research, addressing policy issues, developing training materials, providing technical assistance, outreach, and as well as developing regulation. But it's something that we obviously cannot do on our own. It requires the work across many, and we work very closely with many partners to address the safety and mobility impacts of work zones. And this includes states and localities, associations, academia, and other federal agencies. I would now like to introduce Tracy Scriba, who's going to carry you through the rest of the presentation.
Lives are lost in our work zones every year. In 2010, the most recent data we know that there were 576 fatalities in U.S. work zones. About 85 to 90% of these people are motorists or passengers in cars. There are also many injuries in our work zones each year that affect both motorists and workers. Looking specifically at workers, there are more than 100 workers that die in our work zones every year. And these workers, in many cases, are killed by runovers and backovers, often with dump trucks, as well as being affected by some of the passing traffic. So there are safety concerns on both sides of the barrel. Looking at the figures in a little bit more detail, although there are 576 fatalities, we do see some promising things in the trends. According to the data that we look at from the Fatality Analysis Reporting System, the fatalities in 2010 were down 13.6% from the year before. This continues a 10-year downward trend and is actually the lowest number of work zone fatalities in 30 years. This is all good news. However, it is still 576 lives lost in our work zones each year, so we need to continue our work. This gives you a pictorial image of the number of fatalities in our work zones and shows clearly the downward trend that we've experienced over the last 10 or so years. To talk in a little more detail on some of these fatalities and look at some other statistics to put that in perspective, work zone fatalities have decreased at a greater rate than overall fatalities during a time when there's been more traffic and travel on our roads, and while more of our road work is being done while traffic is still being carried on the facility and driving by the work zone. To illustrate these points, here is some additional data. In looking at work zone fatalities compared to overall highway fatalities, this slide shows the declining trend. Work zone fatalities are 1.75% of overall highway fatalities. So while highway fatalities have been declining overall, work zone fatalities have been declining at a greater rate. If we look at work zone fatalities compared to overall VMT, we see that work zone fatalities have decreased even during a period of increased traffic levels. Between 2002 and 2009, the total amount of travel on our roads increased 5%. Now, 5% may not sound like a lot, but when you consider that it increased from 2.8 trillion to 3 trillion miles during that time, even a small percentage increase is a lot of additional traffic on our roadways. During that time, work zone fatalities decreased 51%. So that is promising. And then finally, work zone fatalities have decreased while more of our work is being done on roads that are also carrying traffic. This creates much more complicated situations for work zones and creates challenges for both work zone safety and mobility. This graph shows the amount of work that's being done for different types of situations. The bottom two lines show entirely new routes and work that's being done for relocations. The other four lines show work such as resurfacing, rehabilitation, reconstruction, work that's typically done under traffic. And you can see those upper four lines have shown an increasing trend over time. Now, work zone safety and mobility are linked. Congestion often leads to crashes, and this is true in work zones as well as in other situations. Stop-and-go traffic, queues, things like that disrupt traffic flow and can lead to crashes. Rear-end collisions can happen in that congestion, and rear-end collisions in many states are the most common type of work zone crash. And this can occur in both urban and rural areas at low speeds and at high speeds. Another thing that can happen when there isn't good mobility in the area of a work zone is we can have driver behavior issues. Drivers may become frustrated, particularly when they don't expect congestion. And so they can sometimes, when they become frustrated, not drive as well as we might like them to drive. Also, sometimes when motorists are sitting in backups, they can be more inclined to pull out things like mobile devices and get distracted by doing other things in the vehicle. So these are different ways that mobility and safety can be linked in work zones. To give you an idea of the overall effects on mobility linked to work zones, it's estimated that about 24% of non-recurring delay is related to work zones. And if you look at the overall congestion picture, it's estimated that about 10% of that is related to work zones. Surveys have shown, too, that work zones are the second leading cause of public dissatisfaction with road transportation. A study we did about 8 years ago showed that there was a loss of about 60 million vehicle hours of capacity during a peak summer roadwork season, a 2-week stretch of time. So we do know that there are mobility impacts from work zones, and those can have a significant effect on safety. So why are we seeing the improvements in safety? Well, I think there are some likely contributing factors to that. One, I think, is earlier, more comprehensive planning for work zones. And these are through the efforts of many in the transportation industry. Greater emphasis on work zone management strategies, selecting good strategies and combinations of strategies to help manage the impacts of road work. Traffic control is critically important to a safe work zone. However, in many cases, there are other strategies that are also needed. Good public information, things like perhaps motorist assist patrols, use of intelligent transportation systems. There's quite a list of different strategies. And which ones would work best depends on the work zone. But it often takes a combination of strategies, and I think we're seeing a growing understanding and use of those different strategies. I think we've also in recent years seen a growing use of data to help us better identify and understand what the real issues are in work zones and to better focus our attention on those so that what we are doing can make more of a difference. And then certainly just as important is just paying more attention to work zones in general, encouraging the public to do that as well as those in industry, and have good training for those involved in work zones from the start of project development through implementation out on the roadway. We all need to continue our efforts to make our work zones work better, and we are doing that. To talk a little bit more detail about what we're doing at Federal Highway Administration, I'm going to talk about our overall efforts and our goal to improve work zone safety and mobility. If I had to encapsulate our approach in a brief phrase, it would be that we're working to reduce and manage safety and mobility impacts. The better that we can do that, the safer our work zones will be and the more effective the traffic flow will be. So first of all, what does that take? Well, it takes understanding and anticipating the impacts in a work zone, starting early in project development, trying to identify what those impacts might be. And then better planning for designing and implementing work zones. Again, that needs to start early in project development, when there are a lot more options available to help manage the traffic in a work zone. Those options involve schedule, design, contracting, and construction options, as well as traffic management and traffic control. It's also important to do this more comprehensively, to look at a range of strategies, as I mentioned earlier. Considering strategies that go beyond the work zone itself, that go beyond traffic control, and perhaps encourage the use of alternate routes or modes of transportation during a certain time. All of these are important to consider, and if they're considered early, they can be factored appropriately into project budgets. And then lastly, to make this happen and to happen as a normal part of doing business, it has to be integrated into the overall culture of how we do our transportation projects. To talk about a few of FHWA's focus areas to help support these efforts, I'm going to talk about 4 things: impacts assessment, transportation management plans, training and technical resources, and technology, data, and performance monitoring. First, in the area of impacts assessment. We're working to enhance impacts assessment. There are several components to that. One is to improve work zone analysis tools. To enhance the accuracy of work zone impacts assessment, we need good tools and capabilities with those tools. We're conducting research on work zone driver behavior to better be able to put inputs into those tools and better assumptions in using those tools so that the results are more accurate. We're supporting an NCHRP project that's looking at some complementary aspects of work zone capacity estimation and driver behavior and modeling that will also help those tools to be more effective. Other efforts in this area include resources on when to use accelerated construction, an approach that can help reduce work zone exposure. Also, how to calculate and use road user costs, and training on overall approaches to work zone analysis. There are also improvements to safety analysis tools that have been coming out recently that help our efforts. The second area, supporting effective TMP development. Several of our efforts in this area are looking at developing some TMP tools and some training. TMP templates and samples we have created are available on our website. Those tools are optional for use, but they give some additional idea of what kinds of things might be helpful in a transportation management plan. We're also preparing to make available some online TMP training, as well as a more involved TMP workshop that we have been doing for the last year or so. Finally, to support our efforts, it can be helpful to have a better understanding of what kind of strategies are most effective in what kinds of situations. We're doing some assessment of TMP strategies to help us increase the knowledge base in that area. Another key effort is to expand training and technical resources. One key area of this is the work zone safety grants. Many new products are coming out regularly through the grants program and are posted on the Work Zone Safety Clearinghouse. These products include guides, field flip books, CDs, training courses that reach a range of audiences from work zone planners, designers, maintenance workers, utilities, and construction workers, law enforcement, and others. So I would encourage you to check out those tools because there are many new products becoming available regularly through that program. We offer quarterly webinars. These are available free and are recorded so that they are available on our website for those who are not able to participate in real time. We also do some additional webinars on occasion when we have a new product come out that we think would be beneficial to explain in more detail. The National Highway Institute offers several work zone courses. These are existing courses available through its course catalog. And there are also some new courses coming out in the area of work zone analysis and an online course for law enforcement that will be available soon. One other area I want to mention is the Work Zone Best Practices Guidebook. We're currently doing a full update of the guidebook. We're nearing completion of that effort, and we'll be putting out a new edition soon. Through this update, we've updated all the nearly 250 practices in that guidebook, removing some that are no longer in use and making updates to other practices, as well as we'll be adding some new practices to that guidebook. So that will be out later this year. And then the last area I want to mention is we're working to advance technology, data, and performance monitoring in work zones. One effort in this area is to put out a work zone ITS implementation guide and some case studies. That effort is underway right now and will be completed within the coming year. This will help show some examples of how ITS and technology and data can be used to address various issues in work zones. Another key element to data and performance monitoring is it can help us better understand work zone issues. Where are the key issues out there, and how can we best focus our attention on them? So one effort is we are supporting an NCHRP project that's looking at crash data in work zones to try and better determine causation and some countermeasures to help address those issues. We also support work zone process reviews across the country to help states better identify particular issues and needs in their own state. And we are also preparing a case study on vehicle probe data and how to use that for performance monitoring in work zones. This kind of data, when analyzed, can help us best figure out, are there particular areas in our work zones, particular types of setups that may be causing more of an issue than others, and how best can we address those? So I just closed by pointing you to our website where we have many resources available, several which I touched on today, and many other ones that are a great resource for your efforts. Thank you.